Greetings, viewers. We now expose King David's darkest secret. The holy hero hid a deadly sin. We know him as a holy man, but absolute power corrupted his soul completely. He desired a married woman, then ordered a tragic demise to hide his unforgivable crime. The ancient palace walls saw a shocking betrayal. A loyal, brave soldier was left to fall in battle. Even kings cannot hide from divine justice. Let us witness the tragic fall of a great ruler. It was the season of spring. Ancient texts record this as the time when all great kings went off to war. Israel's grand army was fighting fiercely, yet David remained safely inside Jerusalem's walls. The supreme monarch walked upon his royal rooftop. The warm evening breeze carried a heavy silence. Below the palace, the city lay quiet. Suddenly, a stunning sight caught the king's eager eyes. A woman of breathtaking beauty was bathing in the twilight. Her name was the lovely Bathsheba. Texts note her as the loyal wife of Uriah, a fierce and incredibly brave Hittite warrior. This loyal man was risking his life on the distant battlefield, fighting hard for the Israelite crown. But the supreme king let lust cloud his divine wisdom. He sent his royal guards to bring her straight to him. The palace doors closed, sealing a terrible sin. David surrendered fully to his dark desires. He abused his power to claim another man's wife. The sacred law was now brutally broken today. Soon after this dark encounter, a message arrived. Bathsheba carried the king's unborn royal child. Fear gripped the mighty ruler's heart in the shadows. Adultery brought the ultimate judgment back then. To hide his massive guilt, David devised a cunning plan. He summoned Uriah back from the distant war. The king greeted the soldier with royal honors, offering him fine food and expensive wine. He urged the brave warrior to go home and wash his feet. The king hoped Uriah would now sleep with his wife. If the soldier spent the night at his peaceful home, the scandalous pregnancy would look like his own child. David misjudged this extremely loyal fighting man. Uriah had a fiercely unbreakable will. He refused the soft comforts of his own quiet home. He slept outside with the common palace guards. When asked why he avoided his beautiful wife, the soldier gave a highly honorable reply. "My commander and troops camp in the open fields tonight. How could I feast and sleep in a cozy, warm bed?" This strict loyalty felt like a dagger to the king. David's dark panic slowly turned into pure malice. The panicked king tried one last time to break his strong will. He invited the soldier to a grand royal feast. David poured endless cups of strong wine for his guest, hoping heavy drinking would shatter his discipline. Even heavily drunk, Uriah refused to yield. The loyal man still slept out on the cold stone floor. All peaceful solutions were totally destroyed. David realized he must take more drastic measures. The great king sat alone in the silent throne room. A sinister thought crept into his conflicted mind. To cover his affair, he planned a dark betrayal. The holy ruler of Israel prepared to strike. He called for a piece of parchment and a feeble quill. The silence in the room felt heavier than iron. With shaking hands, the king wrote a deadly command. It was sent to General Joab at the front lines. The letter was short, but absolutely ruthless. Place Uriah at the front, where the battle is fierce. Then pull back your troops, leaving him alone to be struck down and vanquished by the enemy arrows. He melted bright red wax over the dark parchment. The king pressed his royal signet ring to seal the doom. This was the ultimate betrayal of a king. He handed the soldier his very own death warrant. Uriah took the scroll without asking a question. His deep loyalty was completely weaponized now. He marched steadily back to the dry, dusty desert. He carried his own tragic, fatal doom in his hands. If you were forced to carry a sealed royal order, would you break the fragile seal to save your precious life? At the brutal siege of Rabbah, the fighting raged on. Joab read the king's shocking order in pure silence. As a military man, he obeyed without pause. The deadly trap was firmly set near the foe's tall walls. Uriah was sent to the most dangerous sector. Arrows rained heavily from the massive stone towers. As ordered, the Israelite soldiers pulled away. They abandoned the brave Hittite warrior to fall. Standing fully alone, he fought until the dark end. Sharp arrows swiftly pierced his shining bronze armor. The loyal husband fell backward onto the red dirt. He perished, defending a king who had betrayed him. A scout ran quickly back to the royal capital. He brought the grim news of the loyal soldier's sad end. The king felt a deeply twisted sense of relief. His awful secret was buried with the dead soldier. Bathsheba loudly mourned her husband's tragic demise. She wept bitterly inside the quiet palace walls. Once the required time of mourning finally had passed, the king quickly brought her into his royal household. She became his newest wife and bore him a young son. The king believed he had successfully cheated fate. The royal court resumed its majestic daily life. Gold gleamed brightly, and incense filled the pure sacred air, but the Creator's eyes see clearly in the pitch dark. A highly displeased God watched this terrible charade. Ancient scholars highlight the absolute grim danger. No worldly crown can shield a man from divine justice. For months, the king wore a highly false, righteous gold mask. He sat safely on his grand, elevated high throne, the dark tension built beneath the palace's cold stone floors. The hidden truth was crying out for holy vengeance. Then, a disruption shattered the quiet royal court. The prophet Nathan walked firmly into the great hall. He was the fearless voice of the divine creator. He brought no weapons, only a rough, simple wood staff. The prophet stood before the powerful human king. He did not bow, for he served a much higher kingdom. "My king, I must ask for your ultimate strict judgment." Nathan spoke softly, weaving a brilliant metaphor. There were two men living in a quiet, ancient town. One was extremely wealthy, while the other was poor. The rich man owned vast flocks of healthy, fat prize cattle. He had everything a greedy heart could ever want. The poor man possessed absolutely nothing of worth. He only owned one single, tiny, precious female lamb. He raised the little lamb and loved it like a daughter. It ate from his plate and slept safely within his arms. A traveler visited the rich man's grand estate. A massive feast was required for this hungry guest. But the greedy man refused to take from his own flock. He wanted to save his massive, rich wealth for himself. Instead, he coldly stole the poor man's only little lamb. He sacrificed the beloved pet to feed his friend. The king listened with pure rage burning in his dark heart. His sense of royal justice was deeply provoked today. The king stood up abruptly from his bright golden throne. He pointed his finger in totally pure anger. "As surely as God lives, that greedy man must surely fall." The king shouted his judgment across the silent room. He must repay 4 times the cost of that precious lamb. He showed absolutely no pity for his neighbor. The entire palace court held its collective, still breath. The prophet did not flinch before the angry monarch. Slowly, Nathan raised a thin, weathered, pointing finger. He aimed it directly at the king's cold, sweating face. The old prophet delivered a massive mental blow. 3 little words entirely shattered the king's false pride. "You are the man!" The dark accusation echoed loud. The divine truth pierced through the expensive, fine silk robes. The king's face turned pale in the blinding, bright golden light. The terror of divine justice finally struck him down. Nathan listed the many blessings God had given him. He was saved from his foes and given a wealthy throne. He broke God's law to satisfy his own selfish lust. He broke a hero using a foreign army's sword. The grim, strict punishment was now fully confirmed here. Swords and tears would curse his royal house forevermore. The deadly sword will never depart from your grand house. This terrifying prophecy struck like dark lightning. The infant child born of this wicked sin would soon pass. A tragic loss would forever stain the proud king's reign. Bathsheba lowered her beautiful, weeping, sad face. The weight of divine wrath pressed down on her pregnant womb. The grand illusion of vast power was now shattered. The king finally saw the real horror of his crimes. His splendid royal robes now felt like burning ashes. The great conqueror was defeated by his dark sin. When the highest leader commits a deadly, dark crime, can a nation truly survive the swift, divine wrath? The shamed king did not silence the bold, wise prophet. Instead, he collapsed onto the cold, hard palace floor. He ripped his majestic clothes in pure, dark agony. The heavy golden crown was carelessly cast away. "I have sinned against God," the broken king cried out loud. His painful tears washed away his royal arrogance. He traded rich silk for a rough and dark wool sackcloth. He covered his guilty face in gray, lifeless ashes. This bleeding, raw moment is written in ancient psalms, a pure confession born from deep, sheer devastation. The proud leader begged to be totally cleansed by grace. His broken heart was fully crushed by the weight of guilt. Seeing this true repentance, the prophet spoke again. God would spare the king's life from immediate, swift end, but forgiveness does not erase the deep, tragic scars. The dark, bitter cycle of revenge was just starting. Nathan's dark warning echoed deep into the future. It set the grim stage for royal family civil wars. David would watch his own sons deeply betray each other. Fierce strife would soon shatter the quiet palace floor. The empire of holy faith was deeply corrupted. The great United Kingdom faced a brutal, dark dawn. The weeping monarch remained on the cold, hard stone floor. He was a broken man, stripped of his moral armor. God's piercing eye never missed a single hidden sin. No palace tall walls could ever block the divine light. The epic tragedy of David's house had begun. You will soon witness a legacy drowned in ruin. The once great and mighty hero was now fully crushed. His glorious reign would forever bear this dark stain. He traded his shining gold armor for bitter tears. A single night of dark lust brought endless years of pain. The pregnant, sad queen wept silently in her grand room. The fatal child was born into a world of pure wrath. Exactly as the angry prophet had boldly claimed, a sudden and severe illness struck the newborn boy. The devastated king fasted for 7 long days. He lay upon the cold, hard earth to beg for the child. Senior royal elders tried to raise him from the stone floor. He firmly refused to eat any fine palace bread. His anguished cries echoed through the massive cold stone halls. But the strict divine decree could never be stopped. On the 7th dark morning, the fragile infant passed. The terrified servants feared to tell the grieving king. They whispered nervously in the quiet corridors. If he suffered while the child lived, what would he do now? David saw the panicked whispers among his royal staff. He calmly asked them if the fragile boy had passed on. The trembling servants bowed and delivered the grim news. The heavy burden of loss fell upon the monarch. To their great surprise, the fallen ruler stood right up. He washed his dirty face and changed his torn, dusty clothes. He walked slowly into the holy house of the Lord. He bowed his head low and worshipped the divine presence. Returning to the palace, he asked for some fresh food. His stunned servants asked why he was no longer weeping. The king replied with a deep and tragic acceptance. While the child lived, I wept and fasted for God's mercy. But now he is gone, why should I continue fasting? I cannot ever bring him back to this mortal world. I will go to him, but he will not return to me. The heavy mental toll left many permanent scars. Bathsheba mourned deeply in her lonely royal room. David comforted his wife with a gentle kindness. Later, she gave birth to another very famous son. They named the young boy Solomon, chosen by the Lord. Despite this massive blessing, the curse still hovered near. The brutal sword of violence was aimed at his own kin. The ghost of brave Uriah haunted the golden halls. A fallen, stainless man demands eternal payback. Nathan's grim prophecy soon became a reality. Deep cracks appeared within the royal base of power. The eldest sons began to plot in secret shadows. Dark jealousy poisoned the fragile minds of the princes. Prince Amnon did a foul crime against his own sister. This wicked assault sparked a tragic path of vengeance. Absalom, a very proud son, struck down his brother. The sword had finally pierced the royal household today. David was paralyzed by sorrow and dark regret. He failed to judge his sons because of his own past guilt. How could he judge a guilty man when his own hands bled? A compromised leader loses the moral right to rule. Absalom raised a massive army against his father. A bitter civil war erupted in the nation. The aging king was forced to flee his own grand city. He walked barefoot and weeping up the Mount of Olives. He left behind the palace where his dark sin began. Each painful step was a harsh reminder of his blind lust. Absalom pitched his royal tents on that very roof. He publicly shamed his father where the queen once bathed. The prophet's words struck with brutal, terrifying force. The king's private sin was now punished in public view. David's loyal forces finally crushed the rebels. But the victory brought the father no real joy. Absalom was caught by his hair in a giant oak tree. The ruthless general Joab drove spears in his chest. Joab was the man who carried out Uriah's death. He remained the ruthless enforcer of the high crown. Hearing of his son's deadly fate, David wept out loud. "Oh, Absalom, my dear son, if only I had just passed." The old king realized his sins ruined his family. God's mighty sword of justice was sharp and very cruel. Though he kept the royal throne, the golden glory left. His final years were filled with darkness, cold, and deep regret. He was the giant slayer who conquered massive realms, yet he was utterly defeated by his own dark lust. The tale of David and Bathsheba remains a dark sign. It is a grim study of corrupted human power. Even the chosen anointed one is bound by the law. The scales of divine justice will always balance the truth. As we look back at the grand ancient history of kings, earthly crowns cannot ever hide the sins of the soul. Bathsheba survived the storms to become the queen mother. Her son Solomon would later build the mighty temple. The stainless soul of brave Uriah watered the dark earth. His pure loyalty stands taller than the ancient king's throne. When you gaze upon the ruins of the ancient city, remember the unseen tragedy buried in the cold stones. True history is never just about the mighty wins. It tells of the fatal flaws hidden in the great heroes. The shadow of David's sin serves as a mirror to us. Power without morals is just a deadly, shining trap. King David paid a heavy, bitter price for his blind lust. Was his endless suffering a fair punishment for his crimes? Do you think a king deserves mercy after such cruelty? Share your honest thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this dark, epic story, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to our history channel today.